The Lost Bus, the boy who vanished in the wildfire. 2 days later, they found him a burnt baseball cap. That's all it took to turn a villain into a hero. In October 2025, during one of California's deadliest wildfires, 9-year-old Daniel Brooks vanished from a school bus evacuation. The driver, Mike Reynolds, was called a coward. They said he abandoned the children. They said he ran to save himself. But 48 hours later, when firefighters found Daniel alive in a cave, clutching that cap like his life depended on it, the shocking truth emerged. This is the haunting story of a child who disappeared in the flames, a man destroyed by a lie, and a nation that learned the hard way that not every hero wears a badge. This is Daniel's story. This is Mike's redemption, and this is Missing Innocence. Daniel Brooks was just like any other 9-year-old kid in Pine Ridge, California, a small town nestled in the Sierra Nevada foothills, where everyone knew everyone, and missing children cases were something that only happened in big cities. Or so they thought. This story of child disappearance would shatter that illusion forever. Daniel loved baseball, hated broccoli, and every morning he'd wait at the corner of Maple Street for bus number 47. The driver, Mike Reynolds, a 52-year-old father of 3 who'd been driving that same route for 15 years without a single incident. 15 years, over 5,000 days, over 100,000 miles. Not one accident, not one complaint, not one child ever hurt under his watch. The kids loved him, parents trusted him. He wasn't just a bus driver, he was part of the community. He knew which kids needed extra time in the morning because they were slow eaters. He knew who got car sick on winding roads. He knew Daniel counted trees. Every single tree. Oak, pine, redwood. Daniel would whisper the numbers under his breath, his nose pressed against the cold glass window. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mike could hear him from the driver's seat. That soft counting voice, innocent and pure. The kind of voice that reminds you why protecting children matters. The kind of voice that would soon be silenced by smoke and fear. That cap, the one hanging from his rearview mirror. Navy blue with a faded Phoenix Suns logo worn at the edges, the stitching coming loose. Mike called it his good luck charm. He'd had it since his son gave it to him years ago, back when his son was 9, the same age as Daniel. And on October 17th, 2025, that cap would become the key to everything. The key to a mystery that would grip a nation. The key to a shocking revelation that no one saw coming. It started like any other Tuesday morning. Clear skies, 72 degrees, perfect California weather. The kind of morning where you forget that nature can turn deadly in minutes. Mike picked up his usual 23 kids, including Daniel, who always sat in the 3rd row, right side, window seat. Position number 12. Mike knew every kid's position. It was part of his routine, part of his care. Daniel climbed aboard at exactly 7:15 a.m., his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders, his shoes lighting up with every step, those cheap sneakers that flashed red and blue. His mother, Laura Brooks, waved from the sidewalk, her coffee mug, steaming in the morning air. She had no idea that wave would haunt her for the rest of her life. No idea that this missing persons case was about to begin. As the bus climbed into the hills toward Pine Ridge Elementary, the morning felt normal. Kids chatting, lunchboxes rattling, Daniel counting, 27, 28, 29. The trees blurred past, their leaves just beginning to turn autumn gold. But then, something changed. As the bus rounded Crestview Point, a spot where the road curved sharply and opened to a vista of endless forest, Mike saw it. Smoke. Not the thin white smoke of a campfire. Thick black smoke rising from the forest just 2 miles west, billowing like a dark monster awakening from sleep. Mike's radio crackled before he could even process what he was seeing. All school buses. This is dispatch. Wildfire reported in Sector 7. Evacuate immediately. I repeat, evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. His heart hammered. 15 years of safe driving. 15 years of routine. And now this. This was every driver's nightmare. Every parent's worst fear. A child missing case waiting to happen. Mike's hands tightened on the wheel. Not on my watch, he thought. Not these kids. The fire had started at 6:42 a.m., 43 minutes earlier, according to CAL FIRE reports that would later be released. A downed power line in dry brush. Wind gusts of 35 miles per hour. Within 20 minutes, the fire had consumed 400 acres. By the time Mike's bus was climbing those hills, it had spread to over 2,000 acres, moving faster than anyone predicted. California had been in drought for 3 straight years. The forest was a tinderbox, pine needles like kindling, dead trees like matches waiting to ignite. And the wind, the terrible wind, was pushing the flames directly toward the road, directly toward Mike's bus, directly toward 23 innocent children. Mike didn't hesitate. He spun the wheel, executing a perfect turnaround on the narrow mountain road, a maneuver he'd practiced in training but never thought he'd actually need. The bus lurched, kids screamed, backpacks tumbled into the aisle, but Mike kept control. He always kept control. "Mr. Mike, what's happening?" a small voice called out. It was Emma, 7 years old, sitting in row 2. Her voice was shaking on the edge of tears. Mike glanced in the mirror, forcing his voice to stay calm. "We're okay, kids. We're just taking a different route today. Everything's fine." But his eyes told a different story. Because the smoke was getting closer, the wind had shifted, and suddenly the road ahead wasn't clear anymore. It was a tunnel of smoke, thick and choking. Flames visible through the trees, orange and angry and alive. The fire was moving at 15 miles per hour. The bus could only go 25 on these winding roads. The math was terrifying. They had minutes, maybe less. Mike's radio exploded with chatter. "Engine 12 to dispatch. We've got civilians trapped on Crestview Road. Dispatch, this is Bus 47. I have 23 children on board requesting immediate assistance. All units. Fire has jumped the highway. I repeat, fire has jumped the highway." The world was chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance. Helicopters thundered overhead, their rotors beating like war drums. And through it all, Daniel kept counting. 54, 55, 56, trees disappearing into smoke. Mike reached a dirt clearing 3/4 of a mile from the school, a small pullout area used by hikers, surrounded by open field on one side and dense forest on the other. It was the only safe spot. He slammed the brakes. The bus skidded to a stop, dust rising around the wheels. "Kids, listen to me." Mike's voice was firm now, authoritative, the voice of a man who had decided these children would survive. "We're getting out of this bus right now. Right now, stay together. Hold hands. Follow Miss Carter." Miss Carter, the teacher's aide who happened to be on the bus that morning because she was filling in for a sick colleague, sprang into action. She was 61 years old, a retired elementary teacher, thin and small but fierce when she needed to be. She threw open the emergency exit, the alarm blaring, and started guiding children out one by one, counting them as they jumped. 1, 2, 3, 4. Emma, Jackson, Sophia, Tyler, 5, 6, 7, 8. The children poured out, coughing, crying, holding hands like Mike had instructed. Firefighters were already there, materializing through the smoke like guardian angels, their yellow suits glowing in the haze, guiding families toward safety, toward an open field 200 yards away where other evacuees were gathering. But in the chaos, in the screaming, in the smoke that burned lungs and blinded eyes, something went wrong. Someone made a wrong turn. Someone got separated. And when Miss Carter counted the children one final time, her voice shaking, her eyes streaming with tears from the smoke, she came up short. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted again, faster, panicked. 5, 6, 7. Her finger stabbed the air, pointing at each small head. 20, 21, 22, 22, 22. Where's Daniel? Where's Daniel Brooks? Mike's blood turned to ice. He spun around, his eyes scanning the clearing, the field, the smoke. Daniel, the boy who counted trees, the boy in the 3rd row, right side, window seat. Position number 12. Gone. "Mike, we have to go!" a firefighter shouted, grabbing his arm. "The fire's less than 300 yards out. We have maybe 90 seconds. But Mike pulled away. He ran back toward the bus, toward the smoke, shouting Daniel's name. "Daniel! Daniel Brooks! Can you hear me?" Nothing. Just the roar of flames, the crack of burning trees, the terrible sound of a forest dying. Mike reached the bus, climbed inside, checked every seat. Empty. He checked under the seats. Nothing. He ran around the exterior, calling, his voice growing hoarse. And then he saw it. A flash of movement through the smoke, maybe 50 yards into the tree line on the opposite side from where everyone had run. A small figure, running away from safety, running toward the canyon. Daniel! But the wind shifted again, and a wall of flame erupted between them, cutting off any path forward. The heat was unbearable, like standing in front of an open furnace. Mike tried to push through, but a firefighter tackled him, dragging him back. "You can't! You'll die! We'll find him! We'll find him!" Mike fought, screaming, tears streaming down his face, but two firefighters held him. And in that moment of desperation, in that moment when he realized he couldn't reach Daniel, Mike did something that would later save a life. He tore the cap off his head, the Phoenix Sun's cap, his good luck charm, and he tied it to a low branch on a pine tree at the edge of the clearing, right where he'd last seen Daniel running. If Daniel came back, if by some miracle he circled around, he'd see it. He'd know Mike hadn't forgotten him. He'd know which way to go. And then the firefighters dragged Mike away, kicking and crying, as the forest erupted behind them. The last thing he saw before the smoke consumed everything was that cap, hanging from the branch, swaying in the terrible wind. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, every parent had accounted for their child. Every parent except one. Laura Brooks stood in the evacuation center, a converted community gymnasium with cots and water bottles and Red Cross volunteers, her voice raw from screaming his name. "Daniel, Daniel, Daniel, where is my son? Where is my son?" Her words echoed off the gymnasium walls, bouncing back at her like mocking ghosts. Other parents turned away, unable to meet her eyes, their own children clutched tight in their arms, grateful and guilty in equal measure. A police officer approached, young and clearly uncomfortable, his notepad trembling in his hands. "Ma'am, we're doing everything we can. We have teams searching. We have helicopters. We're going to find him." But Laura knew. Every mother knows. She could feel it in her bones, that terrible knowing. Her son was out there, alone, terrified, surrounded by fire, and someone had to be blamed. Mike's union rep called. "You're suspended pending investigation." "I'm sorry, Mike. There's nothing I can do." The school board called. "We're receiving hundreds of complaints. Thousands. We have to protect the other children." "Do you understand?" His own brother called. "Mike, people are saying things, terrible things. Maybe you should release a statement. Defend yourself." But Mike couldn't speak. His voice was gone, stolen by smoke and guilt, and the terrible knowledge that a child was missing, and everyone thought it was his fault. Social media was merciless. They found his Facebook page within hours. Photos of his family, photos of his children. The comments were vicious, threatening, inhuman. "Your kids should burn like Daniel burned. You deserve to die, coward." And through it all, the search continued. Flashlights swept through the darkness, cutting through ash and smoke. Search dogs barked and whined, confused by the overwhelming scent of burning wood, unable to pick up Daniel's trail. Thermal imaging drones hovered over the blackened landscape, looking for any sign of heat, any hint of life. But there was nothing, just endless char and death. Laura Brooks refused to leave the command center. She stood there for 16 straight hours, shivering in the cold October night, wrapped in a Red Cross blanket, her eyes never leaving the maps, the radios, the grim faces of the firefighters who returned empty-handed again and again. At 2 a.m., a search captain approached her gently. "Ma'am, you should rest. We're doing everything we can. We'll continue at first light." But Laura shook her head. "He's out there. He's scared. He's calling for me. I know he is." She started to cry then, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. "He's only 9. He's just a baby. He still sleeps with his teddy bear. He's afraid of the dark. How can he survive out there in the dark?" The search captain had no answer, because the truth was, he probably couldn't. The statistics were brutal. Children lost in wildfires rarely survived more than a few hours. The smoke inhalation alone was usually fatal. The heat, the lack of water, the terror. It was too much for a small body, a small mind. By dawn on October 18th, the second day, the fire had been partially contained. 72% containment, the report said. Over 15,000 acres burned, 3 homes destroyed, 147 people evacuated, and 1 child still missing. The search resumed with renewed intensity. Fresh crews, fresh hope, but hope was fading fast. The overnight temperatures had dropped to 40 degrees. Daniel was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. No jacket, no supplies. If the fire hadn't killed him, hypothermia might have. Mike didn't sleep that first night. He sat in his living room, the broken window covered with plywood, his wife and children asleep upstairs, and he prayed. He wasn't a religious man, hadn't been to church since he was a boy, but he prayed anyway. Please, God, please let him be alive. Take me instead. Take anything. Just let that boy live. At 6 a.m., he turned on the news, even though he knew he shouldn't. The coverage had shifted overnight. Now it wasn't just about Daniel. It was about him. Was negligence to blame for child's disappearance? Did bus driver Mike Reynolds panic and flee? Sources say driver has history of anxiety. Spoiler alert, he didn't. They were making it up, crafting a narrative, destroying a man because it made good television. Mike's phone buzzed, a text from his daughter, 15 years old, crying at school because classmates were calling her father a murderer. Another text from his son, 13 years old, suspended for fighting after a boy said Mike should be in prison. Another from his wife, I don't know how much more we can take. And Mike thought about ending it. He really did. He looked at the bottle of sleeping pills in the medicine cabinet and thought, it would be so easy, so quiet. No more pain, no more guilt, no more being the villain. But then his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Reynolds? This is Fire Captain Rodriguez from CAL FIRE. We found something. Mike's heart stopped. What? What did you find? Footprints, sir. Small footprints, heading east toward the canyon, fresh, within the last 12 hours. The world tilted. Mike grabbed the counter to steady himself. Is Daniel alive? We don't know yet, sir, but we're following the trail. I thought you should know. Despite everything people are saying about you, you should know we're still searching. We haven't given up. Mike couldn't speak. He just nodded, even though the captain couldn't see him, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, he finally whispered. Thank you. The captain paused. Mr. Reynolds, I was there yesterday. I saw what you did. I saw you try to go back. I know you didn't abandon that boy. But the rest of the world didn't know, and the rest of the world didn't care. By 7:30 a.m. on October 19th, the 48th hour since Daniel's disappearance, the footprints had led search teams to a rocky outcrop 2.3 miles from the original evacuation site. The area was heavily burned, trees reduced to blackened skeletons, ground covered in ash. But there, nestled between two large boulders, half hidden by fallen timber, was a small opening in the rock face. A cave, maybe 8 feet deep, 4 feet wide. Barely big enough for a child, a firefighter named Marcus Chen, 28 years old, 5 years on the job, approached cautiously. He'd seen bodies before, burn victims. He was prepared for the worst. He knelt down, shining his flashlight into the darkness. Daniel Brooks, can you hear me? His voice echoed in the small space. Silence. Just the whisper of wind through ash. Daniel, if you're in there, I'm here to help. You're safe now. And then, so quiet, he almost missed it. A voice. Here. I'm here. Marcus's hands shook as he crawled into the cave, his flashlight bouncing off stone walls. And there, curled up in the back corner, covered in soot and ash, his clothes torn, his face streaked with tears and dirt, his lips cracked and bleeding, was Daniel Brooks. Alive. Marcus keyed his radio, his voice breaking. Command. This is Chen. I found him. I found Daniel. He's alive. Repeat. Daniel Brooks is alive. The radio exploded with voices. Where? What's his condition? We're sending paramedics now. Hold your position. But Marcus barely heard them. He was pulling Daniel into his arms, feeling the small body shaking, hearing the weak cries. You're okay, buddy. You're okay. We've got you. Your mom's waiting for you. Daniel's hand was clenched around something. Marcus tried to see what it was, but Daniel's grip was fierce, desperate. It's okay, Marcus said gently. You can keep it. Whatever it is, you can keep it. Paramedics arrived within 4 minutes, scrambling over burned terrain, carrying equipment, oxygen, blankets. They loaded Daniel onto a stretcher, checking vitals, starting an IV, wrapping him in thermal blankets. Heart rate elevated but stable. Blood pressure low. Severe dehydration. Second-degree burns on his hands and feet. Smoke inhalation, but alive. Against all odds, alive. As they carried him toward the waiting ambulance, a paramedic named Julie noticed what Daniel was holding. She leaned close, her voice soft. "Daniel, sweetie, what's in your hand?" Daniel's eyes, red and swollen, focused on her. "Mike's hat," he whispered. "Mike gave it to me." Julie frowned. "Who's Mike, honey?" "Mr. Mike, the bus driver. He told me to run. He told me which way to go." Julie's breath caught. She looked at her partner, then back at Daniel. "Daniel, are you saying Mike Reynolds helped you?" Daniel nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "He didn't leave me. He told me to follow the wind. He said, 'Be brave, buddy. Be brave.'" The paramedics exchanged glances. They'd heard the news. They'd seen the coverage. They knew what the world was saying about Mike Reynolds. And now this child, barely conscious, was saying something completely different. Julie keyed her radio. "Dispatch, you need to alert the police. The child is saying the bus driver gave him directions. He's saying Mike Reynolds helped him." At the hospital, doctors swarmed. Daniel was rushed into the emergency room, Laura Brooks running alongside the stretcher, sobbing, touching her son's face, his hair, unable to believe he was real, he was alive. Baby, I'm here. Mommy's here." Daniel, weak but coherent, looked up at her. "Mom, where's Mr. Mike? I need to give him his hat back." Laura froze. What did you say?" "Mr. Mike gave me his hat. He told me to keep it. He said it would keep me safe." "And it did, Mom. It did." Laura's world crashed. For 48 hours, she'd blamed Mike Reynolds. For 48 hours, she'd told the world he was a coward, a monster, responsible for her son's disappearance. And now Daniel was saying he was a hero? The doctors worked quickly. Daniel was severely dehydrated, having lost approximately 15% of his body weight. His core temperature was 94 degrees, borderline hypothermic. He had second-degree burns on his palms where he'd touched hot rocks. His lungs showed signs of smoke damage. But he was alive, and with treatment, he'd recover fully. When they asked how he survived, Daniel told them everything. How he'd gotten separated in the smoke. How he'd heard Mr. Mike calling his name but couldn't find him. How he'd seen the hat hanging from a tree branch, navy blue against the gray smoke. How he'd grabbed it and started running the direction the wind was blowing, just like Mr. Mike always said when he told stories on the bus. "Follow the wind, boys and girls. Wind knows where it's going." Daniel had run for what felt like forever, coughing, crying, terrified. He'd found the cave by accident, stumbling over rocks, falling inside just as flames roared past. He'd huddled there, clutching the cap, reciting things Mr. Mike had taught them. "You're braver than you think. Stay calm. Help is coming. Don't give up." He'd found water dripping from the cave ceiling, just a few drops at a time, but enough to keep him alive. He'd covered his mouth with the cap to filter the smoke. He'd stayed quiet when he heard animals, maybe coyotes, sniffing around outside. He'd waited. For 48 hours, a 9-year-old child had survived using lessons from a bus driver the world called a failure. By noon on October 19th, the news broke. Daniel Brooks found alive. Child survives 2 nights in Wildfire, and slowly, carefully, the narrative began to shift. A reporter at the hospital asked Laura, "Do you have any comment on your son's claim that Mike Reynolds helped him?" Laura, her eyes red from crying, her voice hoarse, nodded slowly. I need to see Mr. Reynolds. I need to apologize." But the damage was done. Social media had already convicted Mike. The death threats continued. The hate continued. Even with Daniel alive, even with his testimony, people weren't ready to forgive. Some claimed Daniel was confused, traumatized, his memories unreliable. Others said Mike was still negligent, still at fault, regardless of what happened after. The internet had made up its mind. At the police station, detectives reviewed every piece of evidence. Witness statements from other children on the bus, interviews with firefighters, radio transcripts, and then a break. A call came in from a man named Robert Torres, a construction worker who'd been driving his truck on Crestview Road during the evacuation. "I have dash cam footage," he said, "from my truck. I forgot about it until I saw the news." But I caught something. You need to see it. The footage arrived at the station at 2:15 p.m. Detectives loaded it onto a computer screen, the timestamp reading October 17th, 9:42 a.m., right in the middle of the evacuation. The video was shaky, shot from a dashboard camera at an angle, but clear enough. It showed the dirt clearing, children running, firefighters directing traffic, and there, unmistakably, was Mike Reynolds. He wasn't running away. He was running toward the bus, then past it, toward the tree line, calling someone's name. The audio was poor, muffled by wind and sirens, but you could see his mouth moving, his arms waving. Then the video showed Mike pulling something off his head, the cap, and tying it to a tree branch before firefighters grabbed him, physically restraining him, dragging him away as he fought and pointed toward the forest. Detective Sarah Mendez watched the footage 3 times. Then she picked up her phone and called the district attorney. "We've got it. Visual proof. Reynolds didn't abandon the kid. He tried to go back. He left a marker." At 4 p.m. on October 19th, exactly 49 hours after Daniel's disappearance, Police Chief Martinez held a press conference. The gymnasium was packed with reporters, cameras, families, curious citizens. Mike Reynolds watched from home, his wife gripping his hand, both of them barely breathing. Chief Martinez stepped to the podium, his face serious. After reviewing all available evidence, including witness testimonies, fire rescue reports, and newly recovered dashcam footage from a civilian vehicle, we have concluded that Mike Reynolds acted heroically on the day of the evacuation. Gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Martinez raised his hand for silence. The video evidence clearly shows Mr. Reynolds attempting to locate the missing child after ensuring other students reached safety. Furthermore, he left a personal item, his cap, as a directional marker. This action, according to Daniel Brooks himself, directly contributed to the child's survival. There will be no charges filed against Mr. Reynolds. In fact, we believe he should be commended. The room erupted. Laura Brooks, sitting in the front row, collapsed into sobs. The other parents from the bus, 22 families who'd spent 2 days in agony, stood and applauded. Not everyone joined in. Some still looked skeptical. But the truth was out. At home, Mike watched the screen through tears. Sarah wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time in 49 hours, he let himself break down completely. He cried for Daniel. He cried for the terror that child must have felt. He cried for his own children who'd been traumatized. He cried for the destruction of his name, his reputation, and he cried with relief because Daniel was alive, and that was all that mattered. But the internet doesn't apologize quickly. The video went viral, yes. The headlines changed, yes. Hero bus driver saves child's life. Mike Reynolds vindicated. The man we got wrong. But the hate didn't disappear. It just got quieter, more subtle. Some people deleted their tweets. Some people pretended they'd never participated. But the damage was permanent. Mike's Facebook page, even deleted, lived on in screenshots. His address, public forever. His face, now associated with controversy whether fair or not. The brick through his window couldn't be unthrown. The threatening messages couldn't be unread. His daughter's tears at school couldn't be unfelt. His son's suspension couldn't be erased. That night, Mike sat on his porch, staring at the boarded-up window, and his brother came over. Not to apologize exactly, but to sit. They didn't talk for a long time. Finally, his brother said, "I'm sorry I doubted you." Mike nodded. Everyone did. Not Daniel. No, not Daniel. 3 days after Daniel was found, Mike still hadn't left his house. The school board had called, apologizing profusely, offering reinstatement with back pay, offering counseling, offering anything. But Mike couldn't face it yet. He couldn't face the looks, the whispers, the people who'd been so sure he was guilty and now had to pretend they'd believed him all along. He sat in his living room, the TV off, the house quiet, thinking about quitting, about selling the house and moving somewhere no one knew his name, about finding a different job, something where he didn't have to be responsible for precious lives, where failure didn't mean a child could die. Then someone knocked on his door. Mike almost didn't answer. He'd been ignoring knocks for days, reporters and curious neighbors and people with opinions they desperately needed to share. But this knock was gentle, persistent, not going away. He opened the door, and there, standing on his porch, holding a small gift box wrapped in blue paper, was Daniel Brooks. His mother stood behind him, tears already streaming down her face. "Hi, Mr. Mike," Daniel said, his voice small but clear. Mike couldn't breathe. He dropped to his knees right there on the porch, eye level with the boy he'd thought was dead, the boy who'd survived because of a cap and luck and pure will. "Daniel," he whispered, You shouldn't be here. Your mom." "She brought me," Daniel said. "I wanted to give you something." Daniel extended the box. Mike's hands shook so badly he almost dropped it. Inside, cleaned and carefully folded, still worn at the edges but lovingly restored, was the cap, the Phoenix Suns cap. His good luck charm. "I washed it," Daniel said. "Mom helped. The soot came out mostly. There's still some stains, but Mom said that's okay. That's called character. I wanted to give it back. But can I tell you something?" Mike couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears falling freely. "When I was in that cave, I was really scared," Daniel continued, his voice steady, stronger than a 9-year-old should have to be. "I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never see my mom again, never see my dog, never play baseball, never count trees on the bus." His voice wavered then, the child beneath the bravery showing through. "But I kept holding your cap, and I remembered what you always told us on the bus. You're braver than you think? Remember that, kids. You're all braver than you think." Daniel wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "So I stayed brave. Because of you. You didn't leave me, Mr. Mike. You saved me." Mike pulled Daniel into his arms, holding him tight, feeling the small body, alive and warm and real. Behind them, Laura Brooks sobbed, covering her mouth. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "Mike, I'm so sorry. I said terrible things. I blamed you. I destroyed you. And you saved him. You saved my baby." Mike looked up at her, still holding Daniel. "You were scared. Any parent would be. But I should have known. I should have trusted you. You've driven that bus for 15 years. You've kept our children safe for 15 years. And the moment something went wrong, I turned on you. We all did." The video of that reunion was recorded by a neighbor's doorbell camera. It spread online, 40 million views in 48 hours. The comment sections were different this time. "I'm crying. This is what a real hero looks like. We failed this man. Daniel's bravery is incredible. Mike deserves an award." The narrative flipped completely. News organizations that had crucified Mike now featured him as a hero. Talk shows wanted him as a guest. The governor issued a statement commending his actions. The town of Pine Ridge organized a ceremony, but Mike didn't want any of it. He just wanted his normal life back, his route, his kids, his routine. And slowly, carefully, he rebuilt. The school held a welcome back assembly on November 1st, 3 weeks after the fire. The gymnasium was packed with students, teachers, parents, and press. Mike stood on the stage, uncomfortable in a suit the principal had insisted he wear, looking out at hundreds of faces, some supportive, some still uncertain. Principal Johnson spoke first. "Mike Reynolds embodies everything we hope to teach our children: courage, selflessness, and love. He risked his life to try to save Daniel. He left a marker that guided a child to safety. He suffered public persecution without defending himself because he cared more about finding Daniel than protecting his reputation. We are honored, truly honored, to have him back." The applause was thunderous. Mike's eyes scanned the crowd and found his family. His wife, crying, his daughter, smiling for the first time in weeks, his son, standing tall, no longer ashamed of his father's name. And there, in the third row, right side, window seat, position number 12, sat Daniel Brooks, clapping so hard his small hands must have hurt. When Mike stepped to the microphone, the gymnasium fell silent. He'd prepared a speech, something formal and appropriate, but standing there looking at those faces, he forgot every word. "I'm not a hero," he said quietly, his voice barely carrying over the speakers. "I'm just a bus driver who knows his kids, every single one of them. Their names, their seats, their fears, their dreams." He paused, his throat tight. Daniel counts trees. Did you know that? Every morning, 57 trees from his house to school. He whispers the numbers under his breath. That's how I knew something was wrong that day, because I couldn't hear him counting anymore. A ripple of emotion moved through the crowd. Parents clutched their children closer. When I left that cap on the tree, I wasn't being heroic. I was being desperate. I thought—" His voice broke. "I thought I'd lost him. I thought I'd failed the one job that mattered most, keeping my kids safe." Laura Brooks stood up then, Daniel beside her. She walked to the stage, and Principal Johnson helped them up. Laura took the microphone, her hands trembling. "Mike Reynolds is a hero," she said firmly. "Not because of what the news says, not because of some video, but because when the world turned against him, when I turned against him, he never stopped caring about my son. Even when we called him a coward, even when we destroyed his name, he just wanted Daniel found." She turned to Mike, tears streaming. "You gave my son your most precious possession. Something your own son gave you. You marked the path so Daniel wouldn't be alone in the dark. And because of that, because of you, he came home." Daniel stepped forward, holding something. It was the cap, but it looked different now. Laura had sewn a patch onto it, a phoenix rising from flames, with Daniel's name and the date embroidered underneath. "Mr. Mike," Daniel said into the microphone, his young voice carrying clearly now, "Mom says I should keep this, to remember being brave. But I think you should have it back, because it was always yours. And because—" He looked up at Mike with those innocent 9-year-old eyes. "Because you're going to keep driving the bus, right? You're still going to be there in the morning?" Mike's composure shattered. He knelt down, eye level with Daniel, and nodded. "Every morning, buddy. 7:15 a.m., 3rd row, right side, window seat. I'll be there. Promise?" "Promise." Daniel hugged him then, and the gymnasium erupted in applause, but Mike barely heard it. He just held this child, this miracle, this boy who'd survived hell because of a cap and bravery and pure, stubborn will. 6 months later, the sunrise over Pine Ridge was golden, peaceful, beautiful. Spring had come to California, bringing rain and renewal to the scorched earth. Where the fire had raged, new growth emerged, tiny green shoots pushing through ash, nature's reminder that destruction isn't permanent. Bus number 47 pulled up to the corner of Maple Street at exactly 7:15 a.m. Mike Reynolds sat in the driver's seat, the Phoenix Sun's cap on his head, the new patch visible when the morning light caught it right. He'd worn it every single day since Daniel gave it back. The door opened with its familiar hydraulic hiss, and there, backpack bouncing, shoes flashing red and blue, was Daniel Brooks. "Morning, Mr. Mike." "Morning, Daniel. 3rd row's waiting for you." Daniel climbed aboard, his mother waving from the sidewalk like always, but now she waved to Mike too. A small gesture, an acknowledgement, forgiveness and gratitude wrapped into one. As the bus climbed into the hills, Daniel pressed his nose against the window and started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mike smiled, listening to that soft voice, that beautiful sound of childhood and innocence and normalcy. The route looked different now. The burned areas were still visible, blackened stumps, scorched earth, but recovery was everywhere. New trees planted by volunteers, memorial benches for firefighters, a small sign at the dirt clearing where it all happened. Daniel's miracle site. Mike didn't stop there anymore. He didn't need to. The memories were enough. The nightmares had faded slowly, replaced by something better. The daily reminder that 23 children rode his bus every morning, and every afternoon, 23 children went home safe. The town had changed too. The parents who doubted him now greeted him warmly. The reporters who'd crucified him had moved on to other stories. His daughter had friends again. His son's suspension was expunged from his record. His wife slept through the night without crying, but some scars remained. Mike's Facebook page stayed deleted. His phone number was still unlisted. He didn't do interviews anymore, despite the constant requests. The governor's medal sat in a drawer, never displayed. The town's Hero of Pine Ridge plaque hung in the school hallway. Not his home, because Mike didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to be a bus driver, the kind who knew his kids, who kept them safe, who showed up every morning, rain or shine, fire or calm, because routine mattered, because consistency mattered, because love mattered. The lesson. This story isn't really about a wildfire. It's not even about a missing child, though that's what grabbed our attention. This story is about something far more dangerous than flames, The fire of judgment, the inferno of social media, the devastating burn of rushing to blame. In 48 hours, Mike Reynolds went from trusted community member to vilified monster to celebrated hero. But he was always just Mike, the same person, the same actions, the same heart. Only the narrative changed. We live in an age where accusations spread faster than truth, where videos clip out context, where mob mentality replaces due process, where a mother's grief can destroy a man's life in hours and vindication takes weeks to catch up. Laura Brooks apologized publicly. She used her platform to speak about the danger of rushing to judgment, about how trauma can make us cruel, about how saying sorry doesn't erase damage, but it's still necessary. Some people forgave her, some never would. She had to live with that. The reporters who'd condemned Mike issued retractions, but only some. Others moved on without acknowledgement because admitting you were wrong is harder than finding a news story. The social media users who'd sent death threats mostly stayed silent, their hateful tweets deleted, their accounts scrubbed, their conscience hopefully troubled. But the lesson remained. Not every story is what it seems. Not every villain wears a mask. Not every hero wears a cape. Sometimes heroes wear worn-out baseball caps and drive school buses and count trees with children who need to know someone's paying attention. Epilogue. 3 years later, Daniel Brooks turned 12 on a Saturday in May. His birthday party was at the park, the same park where his mother had sobbed through a nightmare 3 years before. But now it was filled with laughter, balloons, and kids playing baseball. Mike Reynolds was there, not as the guest of honor, but as a guest, invited by Daniel personally. He sat on a bench with the other parents, his own children, teenagers now, watching Daniel pitch. "He's gotten good," Sarah said, slipping her hand into Mike's. "He always was brave," Mike replied. "He just needed to find it." When the game ended, Daniel ran over, sweaty and happy, and so beautifully, perfectly normal. "Did you see that strikeout, Mr. Mike?" "Best one yet, buddy." Daniel hesitated, then asked the question he asked every year on his birthday. "Do you still have the cap?" Mike pulled it from his jacket pocket. He carried it everywhere now, though he didn't always wear it. The fabric was more worn, the patch was fading, but it was still there, still real, still a reminder. "Always," Mike said. "Good." Daniel nodded seriously, then broke into a grin. "Because I'm going to be a bus driver someday, just like you, and I'll need to borrow it." Mike's eyes filled with tears, but they were the good kind, the kind that meant healing, the kind that meant hope. "It's yours whenever you're ready." As the sun set over Pine Ridge, casting long shadows across the park, Mike watched Daniel rejoin his friends. 3 years ago, that child had been alone in a cave, fighting to survive. Today, he was just a kid at a birthday party, living the normal life he'd earned. And Mike? Mike was just a bus driver. The best job in the world. The most important job in the world. Because every morning, 23 children trusted him with their lives. And every afternoon, 23 children went home safe. That was the only hero's journey that mattered. This story was inspired by the thousands of school bus drivers, firefighters, and first responders who risk everything to keep our children safe. And by the reminder that in our rush to judge, we often destroy the innocent. Before you share, before you condemn, before you add your voice to the mob, ask yourself, do I know the whole story? Because someone's life might depend on your answer. Missing Innocence. A story about the children we lose, the heroes we overlook, and the humanity we forget in our rush to blame.